At Chicago Public Schools, why the Board of Education is at war with itself over the botched search for a new superintendent. It's the Trump administration versus Illinois and other states in a battle for voter data as midterm elections get underway. And more on the data center dilemma. A new proposal in Illinois would put new restrictions on the energy-sucking giants.
Welcome to the Chicago Report. I'm Schutz. Well, if you thought the drama at CPS was over after the departure of former CEO Pedro Martinez, think again. It appears the Board of Education simply cannot get it together to complete a search for a new CPS superintendent. That's a process that's going on almost a year now. Now, today, 6 elected school board members claimed the board president, in alignment with Mayor Johnson and his political patrons, the Chicago Teachers Union, are, quote, sabotaging the search. And it comes as board president Sean Hardin announced a mutual parting of ways with Alma Advisory Group, the firm charged with leading the search. Now, in this letter, the 6 elected members said, quote, by making it impossible for a professional firm to see this through, Mayor Johnson and his appointed board members have shown that they are either unwilling or unable or uninterested in finding a qualified CEO superintendent to lead CPS into the future. The dysfunction has real consequences. CPS faces tremendous immediate challenges: shifting enrollment, budget shortfalls, federal attacks on our funding and our families, and the struggle to create a more equitable system. We need stable leadership to address these urgent issues. Now, the letter goes on to recommend that interim CEO Macklin King keep her role through the next school year in time for a new fully elected school board to come in. Now, the mayor's office called this criticism today, quote, baseless and inaccurate. The immigration crackdown in Minnesota is coming to an abrupt end. Border Czar Tom Homan announces a, quote, full withdrawal of ICE and CBP from Minneapolis following 2 months of arrests and protests. Homan touts Operation Metro Surge as a success, thanks to, quote, unprecedented levels of coordination with state and local officials. Homan said he initiated a drawdown of enforcement actions at the start of this week, which President Trump agreed with. Homan says he's proud of what was accomplished after taking over for Border Patrol Commander Greg Bavino. Bavino was taken off assignment after 2 Americans were killed by agents.
We made personnel changes. We integrated BP with the ICE teams. We established a single unified chain of command structure. We strengthened joint intelligence and targeting capabilities. We deployed body cameras. We increased the footprint of internal affairs. We commuted zero tolerance for misconduct.
And after Homan's declaration, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz held his own press conference reacting.
I want to note that the announcement today by Mr. Homan, we are cautiously optimistic, as we've said, and that this surge of untrained, aggressive federal agents are going to leave Minnesota. And I guess
well, if you live in Chicago, it's your first day to vote early ahead of the March 17 primary election, and there's a lot at stake. Voters will have to decide who could replace longtime U.S. Senator Dick Durbin. On the Republican side, there are 4 candidates fighting for the chance to take on Governor J.B. Pritzker in the general election for governor, and plenty of other local races where your vote could make the difference. And for early voting, the new downtown super site opened this morning at 137 South State Street. Citywide early voting in all 50 wards opens March 2nd. And if you prefer a mail-in ballot, make sure to request one by March 12th. And also this morning, State Senator Graciela Guzman introduced the Illinois Voting Rights Act of 2026. Guzman says it's time for state lawmakers to step in and protect voting rights after the U.S. House passed the SAVE Act yesterday. And that's the Trump-backed bill requiring proof of U.S. citizenship to register to vote.
Our electoral system in Illinois still contains real inequities. Too many voters face barriers based on race, on language, or the way that our election systems are designed. At the same time, federal voting protections are being rolled back, shifting even more responsibility onto states like Illinois.
And all this comes as the Trump Justice Department has been locked in a tug of war with Illinois and other states about getting access to voter data. And here to weigh in on that aspect of this is Dan Vicuña, senior analyst and election security and voting at the group Common Cause. Mr. Vicuña, thanks for joining us. States have been getting antsy about this push from the DOJ to get access to voter rolls. Where are we with this battle right now?
Well, the Justice Department has demanded voter data, full voting lists, which include personal identifying information like driver's license number, partial social security numbers from almost the entire country, about 47 states at our last count. Many have rightfully decided that this is an unjustifiable vacuuming up of personal data. They've pushed back. In response, Department of Justice has sued 24 states. Common Cause has gotten involved, intervened as a defendant in 14. But what we're seeing is truly a data grab that no administration has ever sought before and that no court has ever justified, really putting people's personal data at risk for no reason whatsoever.
And here in Illinois, one of the states that the DOJ has been targeting, the State Elections Board has resisted calls to turn over extensive data, addresses, social security numbers, and that kind of voter data. But they tell me they still aren't exactly sure why the DOJ wants this, and they have not articulated what they want to do with it. Is that your understanding?
Right. It's very unclear. I mean, I think one reasonable suspicion people have is that this is related to the big lie. You know, the president of the United States lost an election in 2020, an election run fairly and squarely, and he has not gotten over it. So he's sending folks around the country to sue states, to intimidate states. He had the FBI basically invade Fulton County, Georgia, to look at 5-year-old ballots to perpetuate the big lie about that election. So I think what we're looking at is some attempt to wreak havoc, cause confusion and chaos about an upcoming election this year. That's unlikely to go well for his party if history is any guide. And to then, allow some states to unjustifiably use federal databases to throw their voters off the rolls. And I think there are some, unfortunately, red states that have cooperated, and there's going to be probably newly naturalized citizens who are going to be shown as non-citizens in federal databases that were not designed for voting, that are going to be thrown off the rolls unjustifiably if states give up this information, let alone putting aside the fact that this also is a treasure trove for hackers both in the United States and outside of the United States. And there's no reason to do it. Elections are run well by states and localities, and the federal government plays no role in doing so.
So you're saying some states have already agreed to turn over this voter data. I mean, some Republican states have expressed their concern, saying we don't want to do so. What states have agreed?
Well, you're seeing some, about 11 states mostly run, with Republican control of state government. But you have seen some skepticism in Georgia, Nebraska. We filed a lawsuit and that halted their handing over the data for a moment. Now we're in court over it still. But there is a bit of a partisan split, but not entirely. I think, in the first Trump administration, you saw significant pushback from Republican states saying, what is the purpose of this? Federal government does not run elections. There's no reason to expose people's personal data to hackers, to those who would do Americans harm. We already know that the federal government has mishandled voter information. The Department of Justice had to go into court just a few weeks ago to admit that it handed over voter data to Doge, which shared that information, personal voting information, with an organization unnamed in the court documents that was looking to overturn the results of elections. So this is in no way a good faith effort to make our elections better. Elections are run well by localities and states, and the federal government has no business with your personal data. And
we know that the DOJ, every election, already has an election integrity unit that investigates any reports of untoward activity. And election after election, Republican and Democratic administrations have concluded there is no widespread voter fraud that they've detected. Very quickly, Dan, Republicans in the House passed the SAVE Act, and they're saying, well, if folks need an ID, a driver's license to drive, why not voter ID? What's your position on the SAVE Act and Republicans' desire for universal voter ID?
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear about what the SAVE Act really is. This isn't really about showing voter ID at the polls. This is about erecting barriers to register to vote, to make anybody who wants to renew their registration because they've moved, This is a huge problem for the 69 million Americans, married women who change their names, whose names don't match their birth certificate. This is about requiring people to go track down documents that may be in their parents' attic, maybe have been lost to fire, natural disaster. Who knows? Or people who need to go out and purchase a passport in order to engage in their democratic right to vote. Again, as you mentioned, there is zero evidence of some widespread voter fraud problem in the United States. The president is perpetuating that lie to protect his feelings because of 2020, and his allies are going along pretending as though there's real justification for this. So this would be a huge set of sort of red tape thrown in front of people who just want to register to vote and make their voice heard this election year.
All right, Dan Vicuña of the group Common Cause, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And moving our lens back locally here, part of the current Chicago budget agreement is a legalization of video gaming in bars and establishments across the city. But Mayor Johnson didn't sign the budget. He let it go, and it will go into effect. He didn't veto it either, so it just goes into effect without his signature. And the mayor hasn't notified the Illinois Gaming Board that the city will lift restrictions now on video gaming in Chicago, so an alderperson did it for him. And that is the 9th Ward's Anthony Beal, who joins us right now. Hey, Alderman Beal, so tell us about the letter you sent to the gaming board. What does this authorize, and why did you send it?
Well, it wasn't just me that sent the letter. It was close to 20 aldermen who were at City Hall last week, and we passed a budget approving video gaming, and it's about $6.8 million in the budget. And we notified the gaming board because the mayor would not do his duty by notifying the gaming board that we voted to approve video gaming here in the city of Chicago. And it was his job to notify them to start accepting applications so we can start getting these video terminals online. It's going to take 6 to 8 months to get through the state's process to get these licenses approved because of the backlog the state has right now. So every day that we wait is a day that we lose revenue here in the city of Chicago. And we all know we need revenue very desperately here in Chicago.
And the mayor has been, kind of cold to the idea of video gaming. We mentioned he didn't sign the budget. Is there an effort underway on his part, you think, right now to try and repeal the video gaming part of this?
Well, we have been hearing rumbles from some of my colleagues that they were contacted by Bally's and also a couple of my colleagues who are opposed to video gaming. And I think that there is a movement behind the scenes by the administration to try to repeal video gaming. But 31 aldermen voted to approve video gaming here in the city of Chicago. And let me just say, Paris, right now, video gaming is outperforming casinos 3-1 across the state. It brought in $1.083 billion to the state last year. And if Chicago opted in, that's going to be $344 million extra going to the state coffer. But let me just say, the city of Chicago, who we all need revenue very bad here, is going to bring in between 65 and 100 million the first year that we get these things going. And so it behooves us when we have a $1.5 billion deficit that we try to find creative revenues instead of trying to raise taxes and raising fines and fees off the back of people who really can't afford it.
So where does the legal authority fall here? You and your fellow alders sent this letter to the gaming board. Does the mayor legally have to be the one to ask them to lift the restrictions, or can you do it?
Well, if the mayor was doing his job, he would have saw that we voted for this, and he would have, it was just a formality for him to send a letter over to the gaming board saying that, hey, we have opted in. And so we contacted the gaming board, and we also got a very strong legal opinion that says the language in the state just says that the gaming board has to be notified. And so I received a certified copy from the clerk's office with her signature and a stamp with alderman signatures, and it was about 20 of us. And we sent a letter over to the gaming board saying that here's the ordinance, we're opting in, and you all should start accepting applications to approve video gaming here in the city of Chicago.
Behind the scenes, you've got Bally's here, which is building their giant casino and high-rise, and they're worried that this is going to eat into their revenue. But also, video gaming terminals have lots of lobbyists. Let's just say there's lobbyists on both sides. So where's the truth in terms of what's best for the city of Chicago? Will all this video gaming eat into the revenue of Bally's to where any new revenue from gambling will just kind of equal out?
Absolutely not. People who play video gaming are not the same people that go to casinos. So it won't affect Bally's one way or the other. But let me just say this. Bally's is already underperforming. Bally's temporary casino was supposed to bring in a couple of hundred million to the city of Chicago. Last year, they brought in $25 million. And they're claiming because we don't have our new building, and they're coming up with all these excuses. Bottom line is Bally's was the worst casino that Chicago could have picked out of all the casino operators. They don't have good capital. They're not good operators. They've never built a casino. This is their first casino they've ever built. And this is who we choose. They're underperforming. And right now, with the people of Chicago staring down a huge deficit again, why would we not try to capitalize on revenue to help offset the deficit that we're facing, that we faced last year, that we're going to be facing this year? And so I just would hope that the mayor would do his job and implement the budget that we passed by 31 votes. He didn't sign it, but he didn't veto it either. But it is the living, breathing document that we have to abide by here in the city of Chicago for this year. And it's his job to implement it, not pick and choose what he wants to enforce and what he doesn't want to enforce. He doesn't like it. It doesn't matter. 31 aldermen voted for it, and it's his job to implement it.
All right. I think Chicago residents want to keep their eyes on what's going on with this budget fight. Just because the budget is now implemented, it doesn't mean that the battling over it has stopped, as the mayor and alders like yourself have really been at war about implementing things like this. So Alderman Beal, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, you got it. And when we come back, the data center dilemma. How much should Illinois allow, and will it drive utility rates up for the average consumer? Back in a moment. Well, earlier this week, we interviewed the Illinois Environmental Council about new legislation to regulate data centers in Chicago. Critics say they suck up tons of electricity and they drive up utility costs for everyone else. And they say they gulp up millions of gallons of water. So is there a win-win scenario here to allow the industry to grow while protecting all of those costs and factors? Joining us is Brad Tietz from the Data Center Coalition and Mark Denzler of the Illinois Manufacturing Association. Good to see both of you. Mark, outline what this proposed legislation in Illinois is going to do.
Well, first, thank you for having me on, Paris. I appreciate it. And I think it's important to talk about the importance of data centers, which really are the future of a modern economy. as you talk about cloud computing, artificial intelligence, analytics, advanced manufacturing. This really is the future. And the states that lead on technology and data centers are really going to be the winners. And so the discussion in Springfield is about energy usage, water usage, which is a little bit of a red herring, given that most data centers now use closed loop systems. But this continues the energy debate that we've had in Springfield for nearly 20 years, including a major energy bill that passed last fall.
And Brad, what about your reaction to this legislation that's filed? Is it something the Data Center Coalition can get behind, or is there work to do on this?
Well, and it's a 638-page bill that was introduced last week, and we're continuing to review it with our members. But I think to take a step back to Mark's point, the data center industry is the underpinning of our 21st century economy, and data centers bring significant economic benefits to the localities in which they locate. So in 2023, data centers contributed $20 billion to Illinois' economy, supported 115,000 jobs, and importantly for a state like Illinois with property tax challenges, generated $1.8 billion in state and local tax revenues. Historically, or for the last several years, Illinois has been a top 5 data center market, which again has led to all these benefits. But in the last 2 to 3 years, we've seen a significant decline in Illinois' market, and we're being far outpaced by states like Georgia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Texas. And actually, JLL estimates that the state of Illinois has lost over $100 billion in data center investment simply because of Illinois' Biometric Information Privacy Act. Again, we're dropping in state rankings, but so you layer on what the Clean Jobs Coalition is proposing on top of an already complicated regulatory environment, and yeah, I mean it's gonna be a significant challenge for the industry to get projects off the ground here moving forward.
Mark Denzler, we did have the Illinois Environmental Council on the other night, who talked about their concerns both with the costs and with the usage of water. And so I would urge viewers to go check that out on YouTube or on our website. But what about those utility costs? I mean, it's no secret that it takes a lot of energy to run a data center, and utility costs are going up. And is it fair to say there absolutely is a connection here that needs to be looked into?
Well, first, I think the advocates should probably look in the mirror about the legislation that they passed the last 2 or 3 major energy bills, Paris, where we have seen for the first time in a number of years, energy demand is going up. But at the same time, the policies that many of the advocates for the bill that they've introduced have also resulted in the closure of baseload generation. We've seen the closure of natural gas plants, some nuclear plants across the country. And so part of this problem, they need to look in the mirror because their policies have forced the closure of generation in Illinois and across the country. So we're at a point now where Illinois in the Northern Illinois territory, part of the PG&M territory, they've said we're going to become a net importer of energy. We already are in southern part of the country. And so we really need an all of the above approach. And it's not just data centers, it's quantum, it's advanced manufacturing, it's artificial intelligence. We need to keep our current electric generation working. We have called for that. We need to build new generation, including nuclear and gas plants. We need to invest in transmission lines and certainly new technologies like carbon capture, battery storage, but they have to be done affordably. And that's critically important for Illinois families and businesses.
Brad Teets, Governor Pritzker said the other day, if data centers want to continue to build, they should pay their own freight in terms of the utility costs, not just what they're consuming, but whatever impact they're having on the grid. Is that something you agree with?
Yes, the industry is 100% committed to ensuring the full cost of service. And, where this is happening is at public utility commissions across the country, and the DCC is leaning in, at all of those. And, ComEd has put forth what's known as a large load tariff at the Illinois Commerce Commission. The industry has worked with them on that. There was a transmission services agreement announcement from ComEd a few weeks ago. A number of our members put out statements in support of that. So we're leaning in at every level of government and regulatory body to ensure that we are, paying for our full cost of service.
And let me also bring up, because Mark mentioned this, but the concern from environmental groups was the usage of water. Obviously, the Great Lakes, so important to this region, the largest freshwater source in the world, so important to the economy and to the lifeblood of Chicago. So can data centers operate on a pure closed loop system where they're recycling the water that they're using and not just gulping millions of gallons of new water every day?
Yeah, and there's other technologies too, in addition to closed loop system, and it's really going to vary based on what kind of workload is occurring in your system, in your data center. Some data centers are utilizing free air cooling, so basically the temperature outside in colder climates, and some are, leveraging technologies like direct to chip and liquid immersion. So it really varies. Closed loop is one system that is increasingly efficient and being utilized, but there are others too. So I think the important thing to keep in mind here is context, right? Traditionally, data centers have been a large water consumer or user, but by no means have they been the largest water user. And we're getting more and more efficient by the day. So that's the point. We just don't want to be singled out. The average data center today is going to use less water than the 18-hole golf course. The average data center today is going to use less water than a car wash in many cases. There was a study that came out from Virginia, the data center capital of the world, that showed that 83% of the data centers there are using as much or less water than a large commercial building. And you're seeing that play out too across the suburban area, where data centers are repurposing old headquarters sites, and the data center is actually going to use less water than the old headquarters site did it, as a commercial office building. So, again, sympathetic to the, the Lake Michigan, point, but we're not by any means, putting a straw in it and sucking it dry. And, as a matter of fact, we're getting more efficient, and most of our members have commitments to be water positive, actually additive to the system by 2030.
Wow, that's interesting to see how that technology could improve. Mark Denzler, you mentioned this is going to be a basis for the future economy, but how so? What are data centers used for? And is there this notion that if workers are supporting data centers, they might be supporting the technologies that power AI that could take away jobs down the road?
No, that's a false argument. The jobs will change. I represent manufacturing that's gone through several changes, and you may not have as many people on a plant floor, but they're servicing the machines and doing other things. But Paris, I think you have to look back at history and take, for example, what happened with the Big Three in Detroit in the second half of the 20th century. They didn't modernize, they didn't innovate, they didn't adapt. And what happened is we saw catastrophic loss of jobs and population and tax dollars. The governor often talks about what's happened in Illinois with Silicon Valley, when you had things like Mosaic and a lot of these things invented in Illinois moved to the West Coast. The governor's done a great job on quantum of building the quantum campus and building a culture and environment. We have to do the same thing. When it comes to data and technology and innovation, we want those to locate in Illinois. And this is not a case of it's either going to be built or not built. These are going to be built. So do we want them in Illinois or Wisconsin or Indiana? Do we want the jobs and tax revenue here?
We got to run. I'm sorry, Mark. Mark Denzler, Brad Tietz, we are out of time. Thank you much for this discussion. Also, we have debates all next week, starting Monday with the Senate Democratic debate. Don't miss that. Good night, everybody.